I do believe you've finally lost your mind.
Welcome back, Exiles. This test pushed me to my limits. Running 100 Delirious Maps in a row started to make me believe I was becoming delirious in real life. But boy oh boy, did we make some discoveries that will help everyone start generating more divines every single day by adding the Delirium mechanic to their agenda. Before we begin, I just want to seriously thank everyone for all the recent support my videos have been receiving. You guys are all amazing, and if you enjoy my content, I'd love for you to join the community Discord server I created a couple weeks ago. More and more people are joining it every single day, and it's a very fun, chill place. I don't do any server pings, and any of the pings you do receive are entirely opt-in when you join the server and select your roles. But I hope to see more of you guys in there. Also, I stream on YouTube and Twitch a few times a week. If you have any questions or just want to come hang out, I will leave a link to my Twitch channel in the description below. Now, with that out of the way, let us begin. So, what is the secret sauce behind Delirium? And why would ignoring this mechanic be losing you divine orbs on a daily basis? Well, Delirium can generate you currency in a few different ways, but first, let me lay out all three different versions of Delirium you can play, and then I'll go more in depth on each of them when they come back up throughout the video. Delirium Mirrors, which will drop you both Simulacrum Splinters and Distilled Emotions. This is the mechanic that appears randomly on map nodes throughout the Atlas, and is also what gets added to your maps when you use a Delirium Precursor tablet. Delirious Waystones, which exclusively drop Simulacrum Splinters and do not drop Distilled Emotions. You can get these Waystones in one of two ways. You can either use the Distilled Emotions that you get from running mirrors or purchase off the currency exchange on any of your Waystones, or you can find Delirious Waystones off the ground after completing one Simulacrum and using your first 2 Delirium passive points. A quick note is that you cannot stack Delirious Waystones and mirrors on top of each other. If you place a Delirious Waystone onto a map node with a mirror, it will remove the mirror from your map. And finally, Simulacrums, which are created by combining 300 Simulacrum Splinters. This is the pinnacle content for Delirium, and is probably considered some of the most difficult content in the game to many people. Simulacrums drop a couple different absolutely insane items you'll want to look out for if you decide to run them instead of sell them. The first is the unique mana flask that's currently selling for 21 divines on the trade website. Second are certain megalomaniac diamonds that can sell for solid profit as well. But pricing these is going to be on a case-to-case basis depending on what passives they roll. So if you get one of these, you'll want to find it on the trade site and see what kind of lottery ticket you just picked up. And finally, Simulacrums are also the main way to farm high-tiered Distilled Emotions. At the time of recording this, a Distilled Isolation is selling for 219 Exalted Orbs on the currency exchange. Before we can start our test or talk any more about Delirium, there's absolutely no point in me recording any of this data without first completing 3 Simulacrums. Each Simulacrum completed grants you 2 points to place into your Delirium Atlas tree, and much like in our ritual currency test, these points are going to be mandatory to make this mechanic feel good to run. Currently, at the time of recording this video, 1 Simulacrum is selling for 170 Exalted Orbs, making the buy-in for this mechanic roughly 510 Exalted Orbs, assuming you succeed on your first 3 Simulacrums. The first passive we want is Get Out of My Head, which applies a 20% chance for any Waystone you pick up off the ground to be pre-instilled with random emotions already on it. This is absolutely massive because you will regularly pick up Waystones with anywhere from 40 to 80%, sometimes even 100% or more deliriousness on them. Also, these Waystones don't always have 3 of 3 emotions pre-instilled onto them, in which case you can add even more deliriousness to them. To create Waystones like this on your own through using Distilled Emotions would cost quite a bit. So the fact that these Waystones will just drop on our maps for free is huge. The second passive we will want is Would You Like to See My Face? This passive literally just doubles the amount of splinters you pick up off the ground, except for the ones dropped by Delirious bosses.
What the f is that?
If you don't have this passive, then expect to pick up literally half of the splinters I pick up throughout the testing portion of this video. And finally, the third mandatory passive is the mirrors. This passive increases the amount of fracturing mirrors that spawn in your Delirious encounters by 50%. More fracturing mirrors equals more Delirious monsters, and more Delirious monsters equals more splinters. The way I plan to run this test is, the first 50 maps will be Delirious Waystones. I will use a variety of Waystones ranging in deliriousness, item quantity, item rarity, and pack size to see which modifiers, if any, have more or less of an impact on the amount of splinters I am generating. I will also be clearing every single map to make sure I don't miss any of the fractured mirrors. Because I will be doing a little bit of testing here, expect to make more currency than me if you use the information I discover throughout this test to min-max your Waystones instead of testing a variety of modifiers like I will be. For the second set of 50 maps, I will run the Delirium mirror mechanic to test the difference between the two and see which one has the most potential to make you rich. Now let's look at the results from the first 50 maps. Alright, after full clearing 50 Delirious Waystones, I picked up 1,696 simulacrum splinters, which fused together into 5 and roughly 2/3 simulacrums. Now, when you decide to start running your own Delirious Waystones, you will generate more currency than I did here if you listen to what I'm about to say. The only way to increase the amount of simulacrum splinters you find on your maps is to run Waystones with higher percentages of deliriousness. The first 25 Waystones I ran were all at 27% deliriousness and ranged greatly in other modifiers such as item quantity, item rarity, and pack size. None of these modifiers increased the amount of splinters I was finding. But towards the end of this test is when I started running Waystones with a higher delirious percentage that I was finding on the floor with the Get Out of My Head Delirium passive. And this greatly increased the amount of splinters that I was collecting. In some cases, even tripling the amount I was finding per map. It is also worth mentioning that there is absolutely no strategy required to setting this mechanic up as far as splinter generation is concerned. You can use Waystones as low as tier 11. They can even be normal white Waystones. You can use your Delirious Waystones inside of tower maps. You can use these Waystones to make empty traversal maps more rewarding. The only point in juicing these maps past making sure they have a high Delirium percentage is to increase the amount of loot your map will generate other than splinters, which is important, but I think it's worth mentioning how rewarding these Delirious Waystones can be without any other juice applied to them, because some players just don't want to spend the time juicing up areas on their atlas, and this is good information for those people. Now that concludes this portion of the test. Let's begin the second set of 50 maps and see how the Delirium mirrors compare. Before I begin the second set of 50 maps, I'm going to run one final simulacrum for my final 2 Delirium passive points. All of our prior investments are equally as important here, but the passive called Isn't It Tempting is looking very tempting. Extra reward tracks within Delirium were very good in Path of Exile 1, and I can't see any reason why that wouldn't also be the case in the second game. Now let's look at the results of the second set of 50 maps. I'm honestly quite disappointed from the results of this portion of the test. Throughout all 50 Delirium mirrors I just ran, I didn't get an extra reward track to trigger a single time. This 100% confirms that this Delirium passive is bugged, and I would obviously not recommend using it until it is fixed. In all honesty, I just don't think I can recommend this side of the mechanic at all until it is buffed. The amount of distilled emotions we looted throughout this half of the test just did not make up for the loss in splinters currency-wise. The obvious downside to running mirrors after what we now know about Delirium is that you cannot scale the amount of splinters you are getting with anything other than Delirious percentage. And because using a Delirious Waystone removes the mirror from your map, there is no way to make these mirrors drop you more splinters. Okay, let's go ahead and compare the profit from each section side by side. From the first 50 Delirious Waystones, we made a total of 960 Exalted Orbs. From the second set of 50 Delirium mirrors, we made a total of 692 Exalted Orbs. I will let you guys decide which side of the mechanic to try out for yourselves, but in my opinion, the Delirious Waystones are far superior when it comes to currency generation. And a huge benefit to running them is that they can be placed literally anywhere. You do not need to go around juicing sections of your atlas with precursor tablets to make these Waystones profitable, which is a huge relief. And these Waystones can even make some of your boring, mechanicless traversal maps less boring and more profitable. My final thoughts on Delirium are that it feels very required if you want to be min-maxing the profit you are pulling out of every single map you play, whether it is Omega juiced or not, which is good and bad in my opinion. It's good because you're making more currency per hour, but it's bad because now every single map you're going to be playing has its color 99% desaturated. And I'll be honest, after running 100 of these bad boys, I want my game to be in color again. I think another great takeaway from this test is that even if you don't want to run every single map as a Delirious Waystone, I'd highly recommend running Delirious Waystones on empty traversal maps and towers. Generally, these maps are more controversial in the community and labeled as either boring or tedious, but by using a Delirious Waystone in these locations, it can make them more enjoyable and profitable for you. Unfortunately, I was very disappointed after the mirror portion of the test. I personally find the mirror mechanic to be much more enjoyable than the Delirious Waystones, just because it's kind of a speed challenge and your map isn't black and white for the entirety of the map. But sadly, the mirrors are just far worse at generating you currency compared to their counterpart. I'd be curious to know what you guys think about Delirium, and if you were GGG, would you leave it how it is or change anything about it? Once again, thanks so much for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, or if I managed to teach you something about Delirium, I would greatly appreciate it if you hit the thumbs up and like the video. Also, don't forget that we now have a community Discord that is available to anyone who wants to join. It's very chill and there's lots of fun discussion taking place there. I will leave a link to it in the description of this video. If you have any questions or ideas for future content you would like to see from me concerning Path of Exile 2, let me know in the comments, and subscribe to not miss out on my next video. Peace!
Your greed will be your downfall.